All right, part 1150. Part 1150, subpart D, exemption transaction under Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1091. 1150.31, scope of the exemption. Exempt and indicated below with the exemption applied with all the acquisition operations under 1091. See with the 1151, super over the and the exemption with the include with the acquisition non-carry with the railroad property with the operator with the third party operation by a new carrier with the railroad property acquired by a third party change with the operators and line acquisition incidental trackage rights. Incidental trackage rights with the include with the greater trackage right by the sale of the assignment of the trackage right with the operator with the line over the third party with the occur by the time of the exemption acquisition operator. If the exemption does not apply with the Class 1 railroad abandons a line and another Class 1 railroad acquired by the line in a proposal that would result in a major marketing extension of the defined in 1183. Other exemptions that may be relevant in the proposal of the subpart of the exemption control of 1182 D1 and 2 and the exemption of the security regulation Title 49 CFR 1177. 1150.32 procedures relevant in the transaction involved with the creation of Class 3 carriers. The qualified exemption of the applicant must be verified note for the providing detail of the transaction, brief caption, summary of the conforming the form of 1150.34 publication Federal Register. Exemption will be effective for 30 days after the notice of the file of the board with the director of the office of the proceeding will publish the notice of the Federal Register within 16 days of the filing, changing the operation when filed by the provisions of 1150.34 notice whether must be given with the shipper the notice contained with the false misleading information exemption with the void ABO initio petition to revoke the Title 49 1052 for the deed with it does not automatically stay with the exemption stay with the petition with it must be filed with at least 7 days before the exemption becomes effective. The application must preserve the intact with the type of the structure within 50 years of additional compliance with the requirements of the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act, Title 16 U.S. Standard Code 470. Achieve the project annual revenue with the carry with the created with the transaction under the exemption exceed for $5 million. The applicant must also at least 60 days before the exemption, before the effective date, post a notice of the intent of the undertaking of the proposed transaction and have the workplace employee for the effective loan with the strip of the copy of the notice of the National Office of the Labor Unions with employees of the field expected in line, setting forth the type of the numbers of the job expected to be able the terms of an employment, the principal employee with the selection lines are to be transferred with the certified of the board and is done. 1150.33 and information contained with the notice of the transaction of the Class 3 carriers, full name and address for the applicant with the name and address for the telephone number of the representative of the applicant with the receipt of the correspondence with the state of the agreement that has reached for the details about an agreement will be reached the operator and the property of the brief summary of the proposed transaction include the name and the address of the railroad transferring with the subject project with the proposed time schedule for the consumption of the transaction, the milepost of the subject of the property include with the branch line with the and the total route with the miles acquired with the map clearly indicate that they agree with it to be served with include with the origin terminus station cities in the county of the states certificate application projected revenues do not exceed over the qualified with the Class 3 carriers the interchange comments. The following party must certify whether the non-proposed acquisition operation rail lines involved with the provision of the agreement that may fill a future interchange with the third-party connection carry with the whether the outer right with the prohibition per car penalty adjustment with the purchase price of the rental positive the economic inducement and or other interchange commitment the insights for the provision existing of the following additional information must be provided. The following information paragraphs H1, 7 sections may be filed with the board of Title 49 CFR 11.04.14a will be kept with the confidential need for the filing and accompanying with the motion with the protect within Title 49 CFR 11.04.14b. The existence of the provisions of the agreement with the identification and affection for the interchange form for the confidential completion version of the document contained with the addressing the provision agreement with the list of shipper that currently with the habit you with the line with the question last due the year of the aggregated number of the carload shipper to specify with the paragraph H1.2 with the section over the H1.3. The section originally terminated with the confidential certification of the filing provided with the notice of the proposed transaction interchange commitment shippers with the identified in the paragraph H1.3 with the section. A list of the third party railroads could physically interchange with the line sought to be acquired with the release of the estimate with the difference between the same and the lease of the price of the without the interchange commitment with the confidential. Alright, change for the 7. And change for the case of the caption of the over the existing of the interchange commitment is apparent with the case of the title of the obtain the information about the interchange commitment with you for the proceeding with the board or shipper with the other affected party may be granted with the access of the confidential documents filed with the pursuant to H1 over the section filing, serving upon with the petitioner motion of access confidential documents containing the explanation of the parties need with the information appropriate to draft protective order confidential undertakings that will ensure for the document over the confidential deadlines reply with a motion access for the within 5 days after the motion filed. The board will rule the motion active within 30 days after the motion is filed. Parties must produce relevant documents within 5 days of the receipt of the board approve of the signed confidential agreement. Part 115034 caption summary transaction involved with the creation of Class 3 carriers. The caption summary must be with the following form of the information summarized with the numbers identified with the key below. The Service of Transportation No Exemption Finance document number 1, exemption 2 and 3, as well with the notice exemption 2, 3, and line 4, comments with it must be filed with the board and serving the 5 and 6 key. The symbol, the name of the entry with acquiring with the operating in line with both the type of the transaction to acquire operator both, the transfer, the description of the line, the position representative, the address for the telephone number to cross-reference the class exemption be used. The notice of filed with 115031 notice the name of the false misleading information exempted, exemption for the ab initio, for the pension, for the revoke, for the exemption for the under Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1052, for the D, with the may be the file with the any time of the filing of the position revoked with the not automatically gives day of the transaction. Art 115035 of the procedure relevant to the date transaction involved with the creation of the Class 1, Class 2 carrier. The qualified with the exemption of the applicant must serve with the notice of the intent of the notice exemption no later than 14 days of the notice of the exemption. It is filed with the board, but the applicant must comply with the notice of the requirement 115032E. Notice of the intent must contain all the information required with 115033 and exclude with 115033G with the general statement. The service of the intention for the general statement of the labor impact with the notice of the intent must be served with the governor of each of the state with which the track is to be sold, state of the Department of Transportation, equivalent agency, and the National Office of the Labor Unions employed with the effective of the line, with strip of the representation at least 50% of the volume of local traffic, given the traffic or origination of the terminating on the lines of most recent 12 months for the data that is available to become being the largest shipper of the working down. Application must be filed with the verified with the notice exemption conforming the requirements of the B above and 115034 with the certified in compliance with 1135 A and B and C, attaching with a copy of the notice of the intent. The exemption of the effective of the 45 days notice is filed with the board with the director of the office of the proceeding will publish with the notice of the Federal Register within 16 days of the notice, 16 days of the filing. After the notice contained the false misleading information exemption of the ab initio of the petition revoked with the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1052 D for the does not automatically stay with the transaction stay with the petition filed with the 7 days of the filing the notice of the exemption stay petition must be filed with the 14 days before the exemption becomes effective to be considered. Stay petition must be timely served with the applicant, and the applicant must comply with 115032D with regarding the Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act of Title 16 U.S. Standard Code 470. 115036 with exemption construction of the track. Exemption construction connecting track. Scope of the class exemption will apply with the proceeding involved with the construction and operation for the connecting of the line railroad. Existing railroad rights ways land owned by the connecting railroad under Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1091 A, B, and C with the C of the reference connection track of the Title 49 CFR 11056B1. The class exemption is designed to expedite with the facility with the connection traction construction and ensuring the fully timely environmental review of the Surface Transportation Board has been found prior to the connection of the truck construction operation that not necessarily the carry out of the rail transportation policy with the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1010-1 with the continued regulation with the necessary to protect with the shippers and abuse with the market power with the construction of the connection track with the limited scope of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1050-02 the class exemption pre-filing of the notice of environmental report historical report notice of exemption must be filed with the comply with the procedure 1150-36B and then C with the rewards of environmental codified with the Title 49 CFR 1105 and the environmental requirements. For the environmental regulation, Title 49, Part 1105 of the must comply with the fully with the environmental report with containing the information specified in Title 49 CFR 1105 7E with the historical report containing the information specified in Title 49 CFR 1105 D8. 1105-8D must be filed with either the same time with the notice of the exemption is filed with the Title 49 1105-7A with the any sig with the exemption with the authority to be also served with this and copies of the environmental report with the agency listed with the Title 49 CFR 1105-7B with the because of the environmental report must include the certification appropriate to the agency that consults with its preparation. C the Title 49 CFR 1105-7C paragraph should be given the environmental historic consolidation well before the notice of exemption is filed with the environmental requirements may be waived with the modified with the position demonstrated with the writing and such action is appropriate to see Title 49 1105-10C is advantage to the party with the consult of the board office of environmental analysis for the earliest possible date of the environmental review. Procedure of the date. At least of the 20 days prior to the filing of note of the exemption of the day with the exemption with the board. Exemption with the board with the parties seeking the exemption authority must notify the rating of the State Public Service Commission, the State of the Department of Transportation, equivalent agency of the State Clearinghouse, that there is no clearinghouse, the State with Environmental Protection Agency of each state with involved with the pre-filing with the notice of those shall include with the name and the address of the railroad, other entity with the process for the construction of the line proposed to operate with the complete with the description of the construction operation, include with the map and then include education class exemption procedure is being used and with the approximate date of the construction if then proposed to begin with the pre-filing notice, include with the information certification that the petitioner comply with the Board of Environmental Regulation, codified in Title 49 CFR 1105 of the statement that These regulations generally require the board to prepare the environmental assessment of the environmental impact with a statement of the necessary make of additional environmental assessment and environmental impact and a statement of the appropriate available to the party to the public upon the request of the OEA. Office of the Environmental Agency. Respect with the following conservation comments of the environmental documents as well as the position statement of the reconservation. Petitioner must be verified with the notice exemption from the board at least 90 days before the construction proposed to begin with addition with the information contained in 1150-36 of the C1 with the notice shall include the statement of the certifying with complying with environmental rules at Title 49 CFR Part 1105 of the pre-filing notice of the Title 49 1150-36C. 1. The Board of the Director Office of Proceedings shall publish the notice of the Federal Register of 20 days with the notice of the exemption for the receiver to describe the construction project with the invite for the comments. The Office of Environmental Agency will prepare the environmental assessment of the necessary environmental information service environmental impact statement. Environmental impact statement. The environmental assessment generally made within 15 days of the Federal Register. Note that the strip of all the priors appropriate others may request a copy of the OEA. Deadline with the submission with the comments for the environmental assessment of generally within 30 days availability if the environmental impact statement is prepared with the time frames procedures set forth in Title 49 CFR 1105-10A generally will apply. The Board environmental documents together with any of the comments of the OEA recommendation shall be used as assignment will allow the parish construction projects to proceed under the class exemption with the impose the appropriate mitigating the condition of the youth, including the youth of environmental preferable route with the board conducts a particular projection result of the serious and adverse environmental consequence that can inadequately mitigate with the may deny authority to proceed the construction in class with the exemption. Know that they will know the no build alternative the person believing that they can show the need for the particular line outweigh the adverse environmental consequences they have filed with the application approved with the proposed construction on Title 49-1091. No construction may begin until the board has completed the environmental review of the issue with the final decision. Petition stay with the effect of the date of the notice exemption with other environmental with the historic preservation grounds must be filed within 10 days of the Federal Register publication. Petitions of effect of the date of the notice of the environmental historic preservation grounds must be filed at any time but that was refilled sufficiently advance for the effect of the date allowed for the board to consider the act of the petition before the notice becomes effective. The petition's reconsideration must be filled within 20 days of the Federal Register publication. Exemptions generally with effect of the 70 day of the publication Federal Register unless the day with the notice of the exemption for the misleading information exemption for the void AB initio of the board summarily reject the exemption notice. When significant environmental issues that have raised the discovered environmental review of the process of the board shall issue the board before effective date of the exemption final decision line with the exemption before effective date imposing appropriate mitigation conditions for the taking the other appropriate actions such as the selecting no build alternative. When there has been full environmental review, significant environmental issue that have been raised to discover the board through the director of the proceedings shall issue before the effective of the exemption final decision consisting of the filing of the no significant impact to show that the environmental record has considered the Title 49 CFR 1150-10G. The board is on its own motion and the request of the party of the case of the state of the effective date with an individual notice of the exemption and an informed decision environmental issues can be made prior to the day of the exemption authority. Otherwise, the effect of the date will grant initially appear with the days of the pre-resolution environmental issue, the issuance of the final decision. The board expects the use of the 60-day period is usually sufficient for these purposes used unless the preparation of the environmental impact statement is required. However, the environmental issue for the remaining unresolved of the expiration 60-day period of the board is on its own motion. At the request of the party of the case will extend the stay that is necessary to permit the completion of the environmental review of the issue. The final decision of the board order will specify the duration exemption and initial stay period is requiring the preparation of the environmental impact statement. The board will extend the stay of the period of sufficient to permit the compliance with the procedural guideline established for the board environmental regulation. Or the third-party consultant with the environmental with the historic report will require in Title 49 CFR 1105-11 and 1105-8 will not require the petitioner engage with the third-party consultant with the approve of the OEA, acts under the OEA direction and supervision in preparing the environmental assessment, environmental impact statement with the such gave the third-party consultant the most active on behalf of the board, working on OEA's direction of the collective environmental information needed with the comply with the draft of the environmental assessment, environmental impact statement, which is prepared for the Office of the Environmental Agency direction with the submit of the OEA with the final review and approval of C Title 49 CFR 1105D10-8. 1105D10D. Or subpart E, exemption transaction Title 49 U.S. Code 1092 for Class 3 carriers.